got to talk to some realtors.
Yeah, it's a good gig.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I love those kind of jobs.
You get buying and selling people.
Yeah, sure.
People are trying to unload a house that needs work.
and that stuff has to happen on a reliable time frame.
It's the only chance my house has of being finished is if I have to sell it.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Editorial Director Justin Fink.
Hey, guys.
Rob Wadzak, Digital Brand Manager.
Howdy.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hello.
Please email us your questions at fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
So is this like the second week in a row that Justin's with us?
I think we had a week in between.
What episode are we on?
170.
Wow.
170. Wow. That's a lot of times we've been sitting at this table over the past couple of years.
Think how many hours people have wasted listening to us.
Easy
Could have been
now.
doing something more useful.
Yep. So I put some photos up on our board to talk about today. You guys have all seen that.
We were talking about this house recently, right?
Yeah,
And this is on Main Street in the town where our offices are in Newtown, Connecticut.
Yeah, so downtown Newtown, where we are, is like a typical New England downtown with rows of 18th and 19th century houses. And I was sure that this one house was old, like from late 18th, early 19th, the latest. And because it has those dark, unfinished shingles on it and tiny paned windows. And
for those of you out there, this is a look in New England, right? Like dirty shingles is a it's a common siding material, right?
yeah, just plain old cedar shingles that they let go brown and gray.
I kind of like the look.
Yeah. But so this house is like one of the prominent houses on this nice downtown full of big old Victorians. And last May,
May 15th,
we had this huge, they call a macro burst, which is kind of like a little tornado or something that really tore up this area. And this gigantic tree fell on this house, and it had just been sitting there with tarps on the roof for months and months.
It was an oak tree, and I believe it was probably 2 feet in diameter, so it did some damage, as you might imagine.
So the other day I saw them pull the roof off, and it's got a timber frame roof with what looks like 8-inch rafters there or so, maybe bigger. And they started stripping all the siding off working on this house, and lo and behold, it was like an 1850s early Victorian sort of era house.
That they made look more colonial.
Yeah, they just completely covered up the old clapboards. And it kind of made
Can you show
me,
the next photo, Jeff? Look at this disaster, Justin.
Oh, I'm looking at it on my screen.
Oh, man, that's such a disaster.
So that big revelation of that it was from a completely different decade, almost half a century different from when I was thinking, it made me realize something that any of the houses from about the mid 19th century back, that they all just feel very cohesive. The way that people built back then, the detailing of the trim and the windows. Yeah, there were different styles and subtle changes over the years, but somewhere right around the era when this house was built, which was probably the 1840s or 50s, is when we started moving towards what I think most people agree now is that there are just a lot of crappy looking, ugly houses out there.
Yeah, design went out the window.
Go ahead.
You go ahead. What are you going to say?
My takeaway is that throughout history, remodelers have been screwing stuff up. Like clearly when they put the cedar shingles over these clapboards, they didn't detail them correctly, because if you look at every window bottom, it's completely destroyed.
Well, so that's what I'm curious about here, because so for anybody, obviously people are not all looking at this photo, but we're looking at the front facade of the house, and on the lower story windows, there's no siding, there's no clapboards under the windows.
My guess is those windows went all the way to the floor.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So where are you? What do you mean that they're screwing it up?
Well, look at the
upper
top
ones?
top windows. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because, I mean, it was pretty common for a lot of Victorian houses to have those windows that basically look like doors right down to the porch.
And it's great looking.
In fact, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that plywood is covering up where a porch used to come off the front of the house.
I think you're right.
And it's just fascinating. I mean, I've worked on a lot of houses from this time period over the years, and it's just so fascinating when you pull a wall open. You just never know what you're going to see.
You call that fascinating? I call that terrifying.
Yeah.
But so back to what this made me think of is years ago I read this book by Jonathan Hale. I think he's an architect from Boston and an architecture critic and historian, and he wrote this book called The Old Way of Seeing.
Oh yeah.
And he
Wait a minute. I thought Brent Hull wrote that. No?
What's that? Jonathan Hale.
Jonathan? Okay.
Yeah.
I have that book.
So the whole one of the biggest things that I noticed in that book was that he pointed out that he went around photographing old houses and newer houses for examples in his book. And anytime he pulled up in front of these classic old houses like this to take a picture, some proud person would come out the front door or out from their garden and offer to give him a tour of the place and start talking about the history of the place. And he said that when he would pull into like a 40s, 50s, 60s neighborhood and take pictures of little bungalows and ranch houses that were just sort of crammed together and all cookie cutter houses, people would call the cops on him.
Yeah.
People would come out and say, you know, and look all suspicious and ask him what he was doing. And they would never even assume that he had any good reason to be taking a photograph of their house. And it kind of
because no one had before, right?
It kind of clues you into a lot of the points that he makes in the book in that we sort of inherently, like sort of subconsciously know that there are certain parts of our environment that are valuable and comfortable and that people are interested in. And it just makes me sad for all the people that live in those houses, and it might actually be having a seriously negative effect on their life that they're living in a place that they're not proud of or that is somehow just doesn't feel like a beautiful place to them.
I'm sure.
And
I'm sure.
So the point he was making in the book was that sometime in the early to mid 19th century, when the Industrial Revolution was in full swing and the Victorian era was coming and people had money and people started buying more stuff rather than being directly involved in making their own environment and interacting with their environment themselves, that things started being built by people that didn't care as much or didn't know as much or hadn't had those techniques and details passed down from generation to generation, like every generation.
They know the
before.
how, not the why.
Yeah, and
right?
so
It's the
Yes.
so we just we started to slowly lose, as a society, just a general knowledge of that stuff. And there's still plenty of beautiful stuff being built, but it's just crazy to think how many people are just disconnected from their own environment and what goes into making it.
Well, we talked about this in another context. We were talking about the old popular mechanics where, in the 1950s, it would give you, details of how to build your own TV it would just kind of skip over things like what a resistor was.
Because there was an assumption you knew what that was?
Yeah, because it was just kind of, well, if you're reading this, you know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain... We're detached. We're detached from a lot of stuff. We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know how our houses are built. We don't know a lot of stuff. We don't even know how our phones work, really. We don't know how any of that stuff works. We're just kind of floating through.
I definitely am.
Yeah, and you got to wonder if it... I mean, luckily, I think I see a lot of new makers, new people who are fascinated by how things are put together, and I feel like there's this new generation coming up that is reacting to the fact.
And
that
I think it's pretty cyclical generally. People have an appreciation for handcraft, and then it goes away for a spell, and then it comes back because people miss it. I think it's a very human need.
So was I born either 100 years too early or too late?
Yeah, Andy Engel says that all the time. He's like, I think I was born in the wrong century.
Yeah.
He definitely was.
Yeah. He even looks like he was born in the wrong century.
He did a great blog for us. I don't know if we should talk about that. So Andy Engel, our former editor, described in a recent blog on finehomebuilding.com the reasons for returning to the carpentry trade. And it's very much the things we were just talking about. And it was an excellent read. I enjoyed reading it. I can't wait to check in with him again and see how it's treating his body.
Right. See how he feels in a couple of months.
What do you think the Advil budget is for him?
Is he still riding his bike to work? I thought I saw
I
some
don't think
reference to
so.
that. No.
It's a good idea. Keep yourself safe. We've had people say that we should publish articles on how to
Stay in shape?
stay in shape for building. Yeah, how to protect your body.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I tell you, one of the main reasons why I've gone back and forth between the desk jobs and the shop jobs over the years is because I actually find when I sit at a desk that I'm actually in more pain on a regular basis than when I'm working in a workshop.
Yeah.
I believe that. Even like humping sheets of plywood around and stuff.
Well, there's a balance.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
balance.
I don't
Like
know that.
I was working at one shop for a while where I literally was moving, dozens and dozens of sheets of
MDF.
3/4 inch plywood or MDF a day, and
That'll kill you.
That's brutal.
That'll kill you.
Particle board is the worst.
Worse than MDF?
I don't know. I had to do some subflooring recently in a little attachment on my garage. I was putting a floor in there. I had forgotten how much it sucks to move 3/4 tongue and groove OSB.
Yeah.
It's just
much?
like it's sharp when you pick it up. It's just beyond. I mean, I'm out of shape at this point in terms of building stuff, but it just felt like, oh, this is heavy.
Mike Pekovich, the art director at Fine Woodworking, observed about building materials. He's like, they're just at the very edge of what a human being can manage.
Yes.
And he thought that was really interesting. And I'd never thought about that, right?
Right.
Why is a bag of concrete 80 pounds? Because that's about the limit you can carry.
Well, have you noticed that at Home Depot they started selling those
The 60
smaller
pounds,
bags?
yeah.
Otherwise, we would be using 12 by 18 sheets of plywood or something,
Right.
It's-
Yeah, even wood pellets, actually, they just started going from 40 to 20-pound bags at a lot of places.
Wimps.
20 pounds?
Yeah.
How long does that last in the pellet stove?
That's like
Couple
I
hours.
got to fill a couple of. I got to pour a couple of those into the pellet stove to make it work for a day. But
I mean, people have to handle them at the store, right? So, like, you
no,
can't
they
give
just
them
use
back.
a forklift at the
That's
store.
probably true.
People should go get the old way of seeing.
Yes, we'll put a link to it on
Yeah.
the website and some photos of that house and some other houses. We were just talking about this back at the desk about how finding good examples of what people have done wrong. There's this little brick building that used to be a one-story bank building in my downtown, and they tried to make it look like a colonial house
hate
by
it.
adding a second floor onto it. And
With 2x3 windows. Right?
and yeah, it's like the second floor is like 14 feet tall, where the first floor is like 9 feet tall, and the second floor has tiny little windows all over.
Oh,
it.
they're horrible.
I don't know how you could be so wrong. You know, like
You couldn't try.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be hard to make it look worse. I'm outraged at the price of cabinets. This is my rant for today.
yeah.
So the bedroom closet saga continues, and I've done what I often do with my very patient wife is I stall until she gets fed up enough to say, do whatever.
Good tactic. I gotta try that.
That's not bad.
See, it's not intentionally passive aggressive. It's just a thing, right?
That sounds like passive aggressive to me. Sounds pretty calculated.
So I went looking online for RTA cabinets, right? Ready to assemble cabinets. They come in a box. I did a story on them a few years ago, and you save like 40% over what it would cost to order boxes made.
There's a lot to like about them.
There's a lot to like about
You don't
them.
have boxes kicking around while you're trying to work, like working around, storing cabinets in your garage or whatever. I mean, the flat pack is nice.
The downside is like you have hours and hours of work putting them
Yes.
together before you put them in. So that's something to think about. And like they're not inexpensive. So I went to IKEA, which as I recall in the piece I did, the least expensive option, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is they're crappy. They are flimsy. They use MDF and steel like straps for the box construction, and they're on these flimsy plastic legs, and it's not my first choice, but I was like, once they're screwed to the wall, it's not going to be a big deal. So
Are all RTA cabinets Euro style?
no,
With no face frame? You can get them with face frames?
Yeah, and there are a couple domestic manufacturers who make cabinets. They're as good as any custom cabinet shop. They're just not put together, right?
Yeah.
And you can specify, formaldehyde-free plywood,
Yeah.
and and get various veneers or whatever. So it's
Cool.
a good option. But I priced out 4 30-inch two-door wall cabinets and 2 3-drawer 24-inch wide bases from IKEA was $2,000. So I'm not doing that.
Was this is for your closet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Why
sounds
would
a
you not
lot
just
for a
build
closet.
I'm going to.
it? Yeah.
Well, so, after working in cabinet shops, I realized that a lot of times there's options you just don't even know about. Like, we would never make our own drawers at
Right,
the cabinet
right.
shop. And
You
there's
can't make
always,
money on it.
There's always some local guy who has a couple of guys working for him who just bangs those things out. And I mean, obviously, you got to get your measurements right because we've learned that the
Why?
hard way a couple of times.
The tolerance is 0.
But, because actually, if you're doing some nice Bloom hardware, the tolerances have to be pretty close.
Local
But,
cabinet shops are sometimes can be the best avenue.
Yeah.
Because they're humans. And like you can go in there and say, look, I want an unfinished cabinet. I want it to be these sizes. What's it going to cost? And oftentimes it's like they're going to build it out of plywood and they're going to use the stock drawers that they can order from somebody else or make them themselves on a production line. And
I thought
like
even-
if they're you're going to come picking them up in your truck and they don't have to do anything after that.
I thought even getting them to just cut the parts for me with the CNC, right? If they could did all the case cutting, that would save me tons of time and space.
Well, so you could price that out too.
Yeah.
Just go to a CNC shop.
I don't know if you guys have bought cabinets. I used to wonder why kitchens or how they could cost $50,000 or $100,000. Now I totally get it because you could have tens of thousands in cabinet costs alone.
I've installed even really cheapo cabinets, and it was still astronomically priced.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean,
there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of details that have to fit just right.
Yeah.
There's
it's easy to say I'd do it myself, but it's a lot that goes into that. I mean,
It's many hours.
It's a lot of work.
And handling heavy stuff by yourself.
But-
I don't have a cabinet saw, which would be
Well,
ideal.
and back to what we were saying earlier about moving materials, it's like if you work in a big spacious
Yes.
shop, you have carts, and your carts are the same height as your outfeed table on your table saw. So you can just literally go over to a rack on the wall, slide a sheet onto the cart, slide it onto the table saw. You're never actually lifting that sheet of plywood. Where if you're working in your one-car garage trying to build a whole kitchen full of cabinets, it's like you're tripping over everything. You're lifting heavy stuff. You're an awkward.
You should design, Rob. You like to design stupid things.
Yes.
You should design
Creative things.
Creative things. That's what I said. You should design a stack of plywood situation so that when you take a sheet off the top, it lifts up to the same consistent
you
height.
can actually buy those
hydraulic.
spring-loaded pallet lifts that they use to prevent repetitive injury in like factory and warehouse situations. We could probably basically take the mechanism from one of those things and build exactly what you're
I'm
talking
sure there
about.
are like carts available at Harbor Freight that have a hydraulic piston in there that you could.
No, I want it to be automatic.
Automatic.
So I take a sheet off and it knows now it's this much lighter, and so I'm going to
Yeah.
slide up to this.
There is definitely mechanisms like that, so it's just a matter of either getting or building a cart the right size. Yeah.
But it would
All right, get
depend
on
on
that.
the weight of the respective panel
You'd
product,
have-
right?
you'd have
Some
to
of them
dial
are
it in.
adjustable.
Yeah.
In fact, the mechanism that I'm thinking about, it bears on one of the scissor joints, like
Yeah.
a scissor lift, and one end of it is fixed to one of the joints of the scissor lift, and the other end swings on a little fulcrum, and you have a screw, and by turning that screw, you're changing the leverage of the spring, so it does exactly what you're talking about.
You need one
So
of these, I think.
I totally think so.
Yeah.
I need a bigger building to put it in first.
You just need to clean the one you have. Let's start there.
We got some listener feedback on a couple of recent episodes.
Is it on
and-
Rob's shop?
No one commented on Rob's shop.
That's good.
Yeah. People are sympathetic to your messy shop, Rob, I'm sure. Paul writes, I appreciate your efforts to reinvigorate interest in the trades. I think you've convinced me, but I'm having trouble actually finding the jobs I keep hearing so much about. Let's say I'm a good trim carpenter with his own tools. I don't know if he's actually saying that or if it is.
I got a friend.
He's a capable carpenter with his own tools looking to return to the trade after a long absence. I don't have a network of contacts, but I'm good enough that I'll rebuild it quickly. How do I find the work? I've watched the job boards, Craigslist, talked to contractors, called remodelers, and no one seems to be in as much need of good help as the people on your podcast. And it's not that I'm not finding good work. I'm not finding any work aside from general labor. So what gives?
So
And what
where
gives?
I guess it.
He didn't say where he was,
That
did he?
probably depends a lot on where you live. I mean,
I think so too.
One thing that I've noticed traveling around the country in recent years is how much we don't realize how different parts of the country
Oh, yeah.
are.
Yeah,
You know,
especially us
regionality is
on
huge.
the East Coast and the West Coast too. We think the rest of the country is like us, and it's totally not.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, you're going to have more demand in the different locations, and so sometimes
One thing, Paul, I would tell you is at the lumber yard where I worked, oftentimes people who had recently become available in the labor market would tell us, and we could pair them up with contractors who needed help. So I would definitely talk to the folks at the counter of your local pro-oriented lumber yard and supply houses and tell them that you're a tradesperson and you're looking to get back into it. And I think they might be able to help.
And, you might just have to take a hit on a couple of jobs up front. You might have to say, look, I'd really like to have the chance to work with this builder.
Yep.
And so I'm willing to
work cheap
to not make any profit on this one. I just want to, just cover my materials and I'll show you what I can do and we'll go from there.
And maybe you need to sort of break out of the network that you typically would look into, deal with real estate brokers, architects, interior designers, especially if he's a trim carpenter, interior decorators,
other tradespeople.
I found real estate agents to be really helpful when I was doing a lot of remodeling.
They're always looking to try to find the people for their clients. Like if they're moving somebody into a house that needs work, they want to be able to find them those people.
And they want people who are reliable and will do what they say.
And often it's a lot of small things.
Yeah.
It's great for a little fill-in work.
Totally agree.
Repair stuff, or I need to add a handrail, or I need to fix this roof leak, that kind of stuff,
I got to talk to some realtors.
Yeah, it's a good gig.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
I love those kind of jobs.
You get buying and selling people.
Sure.
People are trying to unload a house that needs work.
And that stuff has to happen on a reliable time frame.
It's the only chance my house has of being finished is if I have to sell it.
I don't know. You look, from what I've seen lately, you look like you're a lot farther along than I am on my house, and I've been there for 18 years. So
I only show you the parts that are done. That's why.
Smart.
Yeah.
You did say something to me recently about how you feel like a lot of your projects, you're just making the place worse, right?
Yeah, I've felt like that ever since I moved in. I look at...
You mean taking stuff apart?
No, I just look at pictures of when it was like the real estate pictures of my walkthrough initially. Like I have snapshots of the real estate agent standing in the kitchen and I'm looking at the cat, that kind of stuff. And everything looks so fresh and clean. And now I look, and I'm sitting in the living room while looking at these pictures, and I look around and go, I've only just ruined this place. Like I've just added junk to it and like
hilarious
little creations here and there, and it was such a blank slate.
Yeah.
Well, and also when you live there for years and years, you think like, oh shoot, why did I do that first?
Yeah.
Or
there's never a grand vision for me. It's not like, I don't think in stages. Because you don't know necessarily.
Yeah.
And it depends on money.
Oh my God, yes.
It's like every project is $1,000, $2,000 minimum.
I honestly don't understand how so many people are remodeling their houses. Does
I mean,
everyone
how do
make
they
just
have-
like astronomical salaries? Like who has $40,000 for a bathroom remodel? Just like hanging, like we can pay for that.
I have no idea, dude.
Just write a check. It's like
I'm
what?
I'm just glad that those people are out there.
I know.
It makes me rethink my career in publishing, I got to say.
Yeah.
Right? Should have been a contractor.
We do it for the love.
So the takeaway though is that you just got to maybe go outside your network if you're looking for work. It's like sometimes you LinkedIn,
as weird as it sounds, like all the people I know who changed jobs, that's one of the things that they've had.
Really?
Yeah.
A good friend of mine who I used to work with a lot when I was a carpenter, he gets almost all of his work through Instagram. He just posts beautiful pictures and tags the town name that he was working in and some other key things. And he gets people from New York City coming up for the weekend to Connecticut, and they find him through Instagram.
We hear that increasingly, right? It's the way people find you now. And, doing your own marketing, you get control of what people see.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay anything for it.
Yeah. And what you want to do is what you show. The stuff you don't want to do,
you
skip
don't
that.
show it. Yeah. I'm not showing.
Yeah. Go wander around and look at some other people's feeds that are doing good work.
And you're supposed to take pictures of their stuff?
No, model your own behavior on after them.
I thought you were saying take pictures of other people's work.
Yeah, just post pictures of their work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's probably some of that, right? So we heard from a couple people, actually several people, regarding our discussion of estimates, which was pretty cool. Keith writes, regarding the level of detail in contractor estimates, one best practice is to provide a very detailed scope of work so that the customer understands what's involved, and then provide pricing related to each payment or draw. The scope of work informs the customer and holds the contractor accountable. It also gives you an opportunity to highlight the coordination items you discussed, like disposal and surface protection. The quote, broken out for payments like demolition, framing, rough-in, and finishes, gives the customer some detail while withholding specific trade quotes. So did you hear that conversation we had?
No, I missed that episode. It's in my queue, but...
So the general gist was you want to give enough detail that your customer thinks you're not just pulling a number out of the air, but you don't want to give too much detail that they're going to pick it apart and say like, well, my cousin can do the electrical work for $300 instead of $500, or
they're going to take your quote and just say, hey, can you build?
Yes.
Can you match this?
I think even more important than the actual numbers, which I agree, that's a great strategy, is for these people who are shopping around for quotes, you have to have enough material details and
decisions.
As stupid as that, details.
Yeah.
Like what actually, how are you going to assemble, the eave of my roof? Because you cannot do an apples to apples comparison of contractors if you're just looking at two numbers.
Right.
Because I can shave thousands off by doing
ugly
using
stuff.
crappier materials or not doing as good of a job or skipping this part of it. And if you just look at the number, it's like, well, this guy's just bet he's just cheaper. Like, that's great, I'll go with him. But if you don't understand, I get what Keith is saying, but you go too far. It's easy for us as builders to forget how hard it is for customers to absorb like a scope of work that's very detailed.
You're talking about a foreign language to someone. You might as well be talking about something medical in Latin, right?
Now, I mean, if you let's say you're having your house resided and you demand that I'm going to get a quote from Rob and from Patrick, and I demand that both of you give me a list of what the assembly is going to look like.
Patrick will definitely be cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. And Rob says, rain screen mesh, and Patrick doesn't have that. I don't have to know what that is.
Right.
All I have to know is that it's different, and then I can go,
what are you going to do about this?
I can type it into Google. I can go to Rob and say, you have this thing that nobody else I've asked has. Can you explain to me why? You're more money. Can you explain to me what this thing is? Is this where the cost is going? And Rob goes, here's what's going on.
Yeah, and why this is important, and why I've included it, and why they haven't.
Yeah.
You kind of. I mean, a good idea would be to just literally put yourself in the mindset of the person you're handing this estimate to. It's like, do you assume that this person understands all these details? You want to explain every nail and every piece of wood, but you want to explain every major step or every major layer in it.
You need to describe what sets it apart from the competition's work, but without making it the competition is going to do a bad job. It's not too many people take that path, and it's just stupid. Just focus on why what you're doing is really good, and don't try to set yourself apart by throwing everybody else under the bus and say that everyone does crappy work.
And I think personal anecdote is incredibly valuable because I do this because of this situation that happened one time, or I took this wall apart and I found this situation, so we don't do that anymore, or whatever it is.
Right.
Show your experience.
Yes.
We heard more on that. Ian from Kent, Connecticut writes, I enjoyed the recent FHB podcast discussion on estimating. Since early February, I've been working on an estimate for an engineering-heavy residential job.
Good Lord.
Isn't that crazy? Since February, the company spent about 400 hours estimating and researching this job. Upon finishing the estimate and realizing that the cost was 30% higher than the client's budget, we decided to present the cost totals for individual chunks of the job. Site work, framing, interior finishes, exterior finishes, and mechanicals, along with multiple schemes for covering our profit and markup, cost plus, fixed costs, etc. In the end, the clients have decided to put the job on hold while they assess their needs and budget options. That is heartbreaking, right?
Yeah, that's why.
Who has to work 400 hours and then not get paid for it?
Well, this is why we've had Shawn Van Dyke on the show. He's a huge advocate for you need to be getting paid for estimates.
That's you're giving your expertise.
And especially when you get into something like a kitchen remodel, be like, look, I'm really interested to hear what you're going to design for my kitchen, Rob. And you're like, great, I'll do it for you, but here's the deal. You got to pay me X amount of dollars to design it. And I'll tell you what, even if then you feel like I'm not for you, the plans are yours.
Yeah.
You can take them to the next guy who's going to be cheaper. And at least I got paid for my effort.
Sure.
I wonder what it is, because I mean, you figure in so many industries, you assume these consulting fees for anything that's a preliminary step of a process.
Yep.
But for some, maybe it's the just the nature of construction, and this is sort of this loose thing where there's a lot of people who are sort of independent and not necessarily thinking of themselves as business people, or maybe it's because of the competition they feel like they have to undercut. But it's just fascinating to see how we feel like it's this sort of loose
That's
shoot from the
exactly
hip.
right. It's we're doing it to ourselves by not demanding change.
Right.
As soon as everybody stops giving free estimates go away.
Can you imagine, like, if you show up in an attorney's office and be like, well, you know, you're not going to get paid for all the time that we spend before the trial, but I tell you what, every day you're there, you're going to get some money.
Yeah.
Or the doctor, you go to the surgeon, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to have a meeting before the surgery, but you don't get paid for that part.
Shoot,
Right.
lawyers get paid if they write an email to somebody.
Sure.
Right. We're better than lawyers.
Way.
Unless we need a lawyer, then we like lawyers.
So Ian says, I'm now working on systems to make sure we never dump that many hours into an estimate again. David Gerstel's book, Nail Your Numbers, has been a big help, as well as delving back into the training I received from the Associated General Contractors Supervisor Training Program. It's been a Sisyphean task. You know what that means?
Yeah, I'm so impressed that we had to use that word on the podcast.
I had to. I'm like, I'm not editing that out.
Sisyphus was the mythical story about the guy pushing the boulder up a hill.
And as soon as he got to the top, it rolled back down.
Yes,
and he had spent his forever, eternity doing it.
Yes.
He should have brought some wheel chocks up there with him or something. I don't know.
That'd have been so easy to solve with a wedge.
That kind of reminds me when I was trying to push that Jeep chassis up the hill in my backyard. You know?
Yeah. Did it roll back down when you were done?
No, I used wheel chocks.
Ian says, despite his Sisyphean task, he's starting to see the benefits this past week when he knocked out several estimates for hammer-ready jobs for past clients.
I also recommend checking out Shawn Van Dyke. You can, if you look back on our podcast, you'll see several episodes where we sat down with him and talked, and his website and the little consulting business he has are so awesome.
Estimating is a fascinating subject to me, and that's either how you make or lose money in construction.
So towards the end of when I was doing a lot of work, I decided that, like for instance, for cabinetry, I picked in assembly. I said to myself, what is the lowest level of quality that I'm willing to build? But I mean, I had to define it, and it was good. Like the lowest I was willing to go was a really good cabinet, and then I reverse engineered. Okay, what does that cost?
Yeah.
And then that way I can go to a client and you can say, look, for about like the lowest that you're going to get me for is about this cost per square foot. There's a lot of room to change things beyond that, but it's not going to be less than that. And that's the tire kicking. It's like, okay, I know where we're at, and that's as far as it goes for free.
I think people call that pre-qualifying.
Yes.
And I think a lot of contractors try and do that even over the phone.
Yes.
They want to know if their client has a realistic budget first before they spend any time.
Yep.
If someone calls you up and says they need a new kitchen and they have $10,000, you immediately know that that's not going to happen.
Or you say, listen, here's what I can do for $10,000.
Nothing.
Come on, can't you just like refinish the faces?
Can't you paint your Formica?
Yeah.
Actually, you can.
Have you seen
tried?
that done?
I
think
haven't
I had
seen
a
it
rental. I had one of my cheap apartments shortly after college had a painted Formica countertop. Classy.
I was watching one of those house shows the other day, and someone had linoleum countertops.
Nice.
They're like, hey, it's durable enough to walk on. Why not use it on your countertop? I don't know.
So it's interesting. My the house I grew up in, where my mom still lives, the house was very much cobbled together by gardeners working in this affluent neighborhood, and it seemed to be made from anything they could steal from the respective estates where they were working. And one of the things that was in the house was a linoleum countertop on the very
Really?
small collection of built-in cabinets that they put in.
I like linoleum.
It's a really cool
I
material
don't know why people don't use it very much anymore.
because it's expensive.
It's not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Nice. It's
It's got a great smell.
got great. Yeah,
It's better than tile, I
Yeah.
think. Depending on when you use it. I mean, I like it in a kitchen. It's nice in a kitchen.
I think
Bye.
it's what, 6-foot rolls. I think that's a turnoff to some people.
I like the tiles that you like,
Yeah.
linoleum.
Yeah.
It's cool stuff. Fantastic colors.
I've told you
Yes.
about those linoleum oriental rugs I found in my attic when I moved into my house, right? It was like a cheap or
Didn't know they made linoleum rugs in the Orient.
well, basically they looked like oriental rugs, but they were huge panels or sheets of linoleum, and they were probably from the
painted?
original from the house. No, like they're like the pattern is all in the material.
Cool.
Did I tell you that when I took up the hardwood floor in my kitchen, I had swastika linoleum underneath, but it was like it was so old.
It was before
that it was before the Nazi thing. It was like a Native American symbol prior.
Right.
To
it was
that.
a common
Very
symbol in
common.
a lot of places.
I can imagine they covered that up real quick in the 40s.
Can you imagine fighting your neighbors over in like the paranoid World War II era or afterward?
Oh my God.
So Bradley from Ferndale, Michigan, which is just north of Detroit, writes, "Gentlemen, I wanted to pick your brain regarding the installation of the zip system in a partial remodel. We're getting ready to begin a renovation to a 1951 bungalow. The scope is generally interior, but we will be removing the back half of the roof to create a full-width dormer on the second floor to add a bathroom. The obvious choice is to clad the new dormer wall and roof in zip system and then install shingles and siding. However, I have some concerns that there will be negative ramifications to having only a portion of the structure so well sealed and much better insulated. I've not done exploratory demo, but I'm guessing the interior walls are all 2x4 construction with little to no insulation. They likely have slat sheathing, maybe a conventional house wrap and vinyl siding. The interior walls are plaster on lath. The roof is constructed with asphalt shingles on OSB. Again, minimal insulation. Would you take a more conventional approach to match or proceed with zip system? No plans to swap the existing vinyl siding and upgrade insulation. And the sheathings exist yet." So,
And he's in zone 5.
yeah.
I'm gonna skip right past his actual question. The answer for me being
Yes, do it.
do it the way it should be done going forward, and go right to the part that I'm more concerned about, which is the full width dormer on the back. Please don't make it go full width. It looks so bad when you do that. Just set it in a foot, even a foot.
My wife, Carol, calls that the greedy dormer.
Yeah,
And I
It's a
think
great
that's a
name.
great name for it.
Can we call this episode the Greedy Dormer?
I mean, this kind of goes the greedy. Okay, I'm going to put that on the notes. Yeah, it kind of goes back to the beginning. We were talking about ugly houses.
You know why people do the greedy dormer, though?
Yeah.
Because those little cheek walls and the little runs of roof shingles are a complete pain in the butt.
You need to think about what it looks like on the outside, though, too. It matters.
Yeah.
It matters. It looks like a weird behemoth box when you have a full width.
I totally agree.
Shed
I
dormer.
do know why people do it, though. It is a colossal pain.
Now, if you have overhanging roof on the eaves, it's a lot easier because you can almost. It still looks pretty bad, but you can get away with it more being in line with the eave walls.
What about applied rakes? Is that a solution for you?
It's not. I mean, that helps.
We
sure.
should tell people what that is. So, the dormer walls and the rest of the house walls align, but then you apply like a fake overhang halfway up the wall, slope to make it look like it's part of the roof,
like as if the dormer is intersected by the roof. Yeah.
Right.
So that's like second best.
And that's really like there's no downside to doing that. It's extremely good for the weather resistance of your house to have overhangs. We've done articles in the past, and like if you looked at the research on it, it's shocking how effective even small overhangs are.
And even like really screwed up
matter.
stucco installations that have good overhangs will perform.
Yep.
It's really the best thing to make your house last if you live in a wet place.
Yeah. If you look at a lot of the architectural details on older buildings, the frieze boards and the lintels and all that stuff, as beautiful as a lot of it was there for a reason. It was to keep water away from the seams.
Not so much on colonials.
No, they didn't. They were just, back then they were
timber
building
frame, so it's difficult.
And also they were also building the simplest houses they could possibly build with the least amount of materials.
Correct.
And I think Cape houses, which don't have any overhangs, were meant to be more aerodynamic too. If you had big overhangs, the roof would blow off in a gale. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, these architectural details that might have had a purpose at some time are carried over to modern houses without any thought of why. It's just that's the look. A colonial house or a Cape has no overhang, so that's why people just keep reproducing that.
That might be one of my favorite parts of building is like the etymology, the origins of stuff that we do. Like why do we have baseboards? Like that kind of.
Why do we have 2-story foyers?
Yeah, well, you can't start in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Why do we have round archtop windows?
But like looking at the profile of crown molding and how that was modeled after what a gutter looked like on the outside of a house, like those kinds of things are really interesting to dig into. It helps you make more informed decisions about when you want to abandon the script and go your own direction.
Yes,
instead of just following suit.
Yep. Yeah, and back to the dormer thing about the overhangs is that chances are pretty good when someone's building one of these dormers that it's on the back of the house where they're going to have a deck or a patio or a porch. So maybe having a little overhang is going to be a nice thing there anyway because there's going to be some doors leading out onto the back. In fact, maybe even consider building it as a porch. You
might also consider, if you've ever seen or look up images of doghouse dormers that are in series and they have
with a shed roof in between.
Shed roofs between.
Yeah,
what do they
that's
call
handsome.
Nantucket dormers
I don't know.
Or something? There's
But
some
it's a
kind
pair
of name
of
for 'em.
doghouse dormers with a shed dormer in between of various widths, right?
And you can do 3 dormers, 3 doghouse with 2 shed roofs. I mean, they look really classy.
Building doghouse dormers stinks.
I've never had to do it. I've just been there when it's being done.
Oh man, it's so much work for so little thing.
Oh, I think it's so cool.
It is cool.
While you're at it, why don't you do one of those nice curved eyebrow dormers?
I love those that don't actually do anything. They're just into the attic, so it's purely just
My parents
an exercise.
have a doghouse dormer. It definitely taxed the builder. Like you can tell that they'd never done one and they were working through it.
Yeah,
it's
just
really handsome looking.
It's the right thing, but it's hard to build.
Yes.
Tom from Carbondale, Colorado, greets us. Hi, fine insulation and air sealing podcasters. Do you think we're developing a reputation here? I have a home built in the 80s that has a poorly vented crawl space with no insulation on the underside of the floor. There's 2 inches of rigid blue foam on the knee wall in the crawl space. The house has hydronic baseboard heat with pipes for the ground floor, along with the plumbing, supply, and waste lines and electrical running through the crawl space. There's no vapor barrier on the ground. Since I insulated the hot water pipes, the flooring, plastic laminate of some cheap ilk, is always cold. I want to add insulation under the floor and vapor barrier on the dirt floor of the crawl space to improve comfort on the ground floor of our home. I was planning to put fiberglass bats in the joist cavities until you commented in a recent podcast that it will turn into a mouse tenement. I think that's probably a nicer description than we would have used, but yes, exactly. What are my alternatives? Spray foam does not appeal to me since there is so much infrastructure running through the joist cavities. Thanks for your thoughts and keep up the great work. I love the podcast.
What does a poorly vented crawl space mean?
Well, the fact that it's vented at all.
Well, I mean, you can have a vented crawl space.
Yeah. Poorly vented.
My guess is he thinks there's not enough ventilation and is why it's cold and wet.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a vented crawl space if your insulation barrier is the underside of your floor.
Yeah,
it just puts a lot of risk on getting that nailing that.
He's got the worst of both worlds, which is
Yes.
he's got a vented crawl space with insulated foundation walls, which makes no sense.
Yes, well,
right? Because the insulation is not doing anything. There's no separation between inside and outside.
do you think that possibly there's something under this dirt, like a vapor barrier down by the footings or something, and they I mean,
My guess is bugs.
Normally you'd put gravel in there if that was the case, but
It needs a
I'm trying to be positive.
it needs a vapor retarder on the ground. That's the first thing for
Yes,
sure, because you want to keep that moisture from constantly moving up into the crawl space.
I love how easily we pass along that advice too. Like, have you ever tried to get a roll that big into a crawl space?
It's horrible work. Yeah.
It's like you just need to put some plastic down.
I'm really, you were talking about inventing things. I want to invent the pour-in basement rat slab floor that's not concrete. Like, I wish there was a way you could pour like epoxy and just make the floor.
Yeah.
Because like my basement, I could never get anything to stick to that crappy concrete that's down there. But we found the last time that guy had those foam pads down there, that's not the way to go, because then you've got air getting or moisture getting underneath there. It'd be so great if someone came up with something you could literally just pour into a crawl space or a crappy basement, and that's your floor. That's your wet, durable, vapor barrier.
You want to get
floor.
into the chemical business.
That's what I'm thinking. We need to talk to West Systems. We need a special epoxy formulation.
Sounds really affordable.
Yeah, that's the problem with epoxy.
Concrete's kind of cheap.
Yeah, that's true. It probably costs, but it's also a lot of work. It's like it goes back to the cabinets. It's like, do you want to sit there for days and like haul concrete into your basement, or
Well, you could spray foam the floor.
People do.
Yeah.
yeah?
So to answer your question, I would seal up the vents. I would put the poly on the ground, and I would definitely air seal the band joist because that's where the majority of your cold air is probably going to come in once the vents are closed off. And see how your floor is then. I don't think insulating the floor is going to make the upstairs any warmer.
Yeah, it's not. That's not.
That's not how it works.
You're chasing the smoke, not the fire.
Yeah, I mean, once you get that place tightened up and the moisture in check on the dirt floor, that's like those are the two hugest things you can do right now, and you might notice a big difference right off the bat.
And if the insulation doesn't go all the way up past the band joist, you can cut and cobble in pieces to make that work. It should be some kind of rigid insulation that you can hold there with spray foam or Tapcons or.
And I mean, it's worth noting that if he goes this route of fully, it's not clear to me whether there's vents in this crawl space or what's going on. But if he fully seals this thing, then there needs to be some conditioning going on.
Yeah, you need a transfer grill. And I
Yeah.
forget, we could put the code section of what it's spelled out, but you either need to have like conditioned air being put in there from the house some way.
Yes, and sometimes it can just be a transfer grill, as you say, like a vent in the floor. Otherwise, in other words, or an actual jump duct, or a duct coming from your heating system. Oh no, he has hydronics.
He has hydronics, so
Well, that might be
enough.
might be
yeah.
enough.
And there's, I think there's a provision that allows you to put a fan, a low CFM fan that runs all the time if you don't want to cut the transfer duct into the floor system. And there's some good reasons to not do that because if you have any mold smells or whatever, that's going to find its way into your house. So
Couldn't you also seal it and have a low? I mean, you could also just slightly depressurize the crawl space by having a low CFM
I
fan
think
blowing out.
that's
through the
what I
rim
think
I
joist.
think Peter Yost did that on his
Yeah.
house.
I think that's the deal.
He basically knew that he couldn't. He had a really funky house, which was like these hollow concrete blocks with then like almost a garrison on top. So there was no way from one layer to the next to really do a great job of air sealing. And his basement had some serious air and moisture issues. So he depressurized part of it by having an exhaust fan.
I mean, it's a radon system. That's how we solve that.
Yeah. So the worst case scenario is you're pulling some of the air in from upstairs or from cracks in the walls, but you're not introducing that air into the rest of your house.
Is it bad that I have not tested my house for radon because I'm afraid to know whether I have it? Because if I know I have it, then I have to actually put in a radon system.
it depends on whether you get lung cancer, I would say, if it's going to be worth it.
Should I wait until then to find out?
No, I would just get it tested. And then you can
just get a test kit and send it in. But
I haven't tested mine either.
yes, solidarity. We're all going to die.
I haven't tested mine either.
Oh, all right.
So interestingly,
How the mighty have fallen here.
and interestingly, in Vermont, you have to have one done before you can transfer a property.
Well,
yeah.
I thought that was the case, and I was surprised that didn't actually happen with the inspection of my house.
Me too. Mine was a little bit of a different. It was like FHA loan or something, and there's different criteria for it. But
You're allowed to get radon if you have an FHA loan.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. Or if you buy it as is, you don't have to do the same jumping through the hoops to make sure it's safe. I don't think I even did an inspection on my house. I think I just waived it.
How could you do that with the bank involved?
I don't remember, but it was some cherry on top in terms of
To
sealing
close.
the deal, getting a faster close. Yeah.
Because I've never heard of when a mortgage is involved, being allowed to do that because the bank wants to know you're not buying a disaster
Yeah, 'cause
that you're
it's
going to
really-
walk away from.
A lot of those things are definitely determined by the lender's requirements, and maybe different lenders have different standards.
I could also be forgetting what actually happened.
So I want to do one more question here if we have time. How are we doing, Jeff?
We're good.
This is from Stephanie in Louisville, Kentucky.
You woke Jeff up.
I had to get him to, involved somehow here. Hi, guys. My husband and I bought our first house. Well, congratulations, Stephanie. It's exciting, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's a huge deal. A 1914 with a gable roof and large front and rear shed dormers, making it look almost like a four-square. It wasn't kept in great shape, but was recently flipped. Looking nice from a distance, but poor, sometimes horrifying quality if you look closely. There's new vinyl siding with a grand total of 1/4 inch of Foamular. Is that the best named product ever
Yeah.
or what? Under that, there are 1 1/2 inch wide horizontal wood strips with small gaps, almost like an exterior lath. The siding had been stucco, but we think it's been completely removed. If you open up the lath and plaster walls, you can see the pink formula through those exterior horizontal strips. See photo. There is no house wrap or wall insulation. Okay, so here's our question. Are those horizontal strips considered sheathing? No, I think they're lath, just like you pointed to. For your stucco cladding that was original, the stucco would have been spread on those wood slats, and if it got soaking wet, the walls were open and had no insulation, so they would dry to the inside.
Right. I mean, what you're looking at in this photo, and you can check it out on the website, but it looks like the interior of a wall. You're seeing lath just like you see in an old house, but it's on the outside.
It's on the wrong side, right?
Yeah, and the 1/4 inch of foam, that's simply put on by vinyl siding contractors to create a relatively smooth surface to attach their.
It has no intent.
To be insulation. Yeah.
We called it fan fold, and I've put up acres of it, siding habitat rehabs, rehabs.
How dare you?
So do you think it was originally intended just as a smoothing surface?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who think their houses are insulated.
I'm sure that the siding guys are marketing it as, I'm going to add some insulation.
And arguably, it could be helpful if you taped all the seams and went to the trouble to make it a good air barrier.
I think that's almost getting dangerous at that point because it's not enough to control condensation.
Yeah, like you go back to Martin's article on the minimum thickness of rigid foam, maybe down south.
Well, I'm thinking more as a WRB and air barrier, on the outside. I agree. It's not
vinyl siding is so ventilated that I don't know.
That's why we love it.
Yep.
That'll get some letters.
Yeah.
We're planning on residing, starting with 2 layers of 2-inch XPS rigid foam, so 4 inches, and topping it with 6-inch horizontal shiplap style aluminum siding from Bridger Steel. So I got some questions here. Would you start off with a layer of plywood for proper sheathing on top of those horizontal strips? Hard to say.
Start off with a layer of plywood for proper
I mean, if she's
sheathing.
using the foam as her air barrier and taping the seams, I don't see any reason to go over the lath.
I would say that 4 inches of XPS is super hard to build with. 2 inches is more than you need, and the code only requires 1 inch if it's continuous. So,
what about? I mean, is it safe to assume that she has Stephanie has lateral bracing in these walls, diagonal 2-bys? I don't see anything in the photo. It's a really small cutout in the photo, though.
Yeah, it's behind there
because she has no structural sheathing. Otherwise. No.
It could have let in bracing on the corners. That would have been a common
especially
scenario.
Stucco, they had to do something. So in that case, if you're putting sheathing outside of your layer of foam, it's not doing anything really for you to structurally to brace the frame of the house.
So you either need to put it under the foam or don't bother.
And it's not strictly true, but it's much less likely to be done for you to be able to detail it to be effective.
Yes.
I mean, you can do it through thinner foam. The thicker you go, the harder it is.
Yeah, the reason I say 4 inches is really hard because you have to think about doors and windows. Like most doors or most windows don't even have a jamb that's 4+ inches, right? It's 4 9/16 meant to go into a wall with 2x4 walls, sheathing, and a 1/2 inch layer of drywall. So you have to ask, the window's not even going to reach to the inside. How are you possibly going to build that?
You have to do plywood window bucks at that point.
It's a very complicated assembly, and arguably for not enough benefit, I would say.
Yeah, the tough thing is that, I mean, well, really, if you're going to put rigid foam on the outside of your house, no matter what you're doing, really the recommendation is that you're pulling all your doors and windows and reflashing everything.
Yes.
Because it's just near, I mean, even though every vinyl siding installation out there is like basically butting up aluminum, casings to your existing windows, and a lot of times they do caulk, around that. It's like if you're not actually tucking in underneath the windows and doors, you're not actually getting a great flashing detail.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's a tough thing to think about adding foam to the outside of the house because 2 inches, you still have to detail your flashing around your windows and doors well. Mm-hmm. And no matter what you do, you need these extension bucks or extension jams.
Unless you do like an inch of foam, and then it's you're not extending it that much.
You got to check the code requirements in your area though, because I don't know.
So I looked it up. So Zone 4, where they are, calls for R5 continuous, which is an inch of XPS or polyiso. You should use polyiso, not XPS, because of its lower global warming potential.
Yeah, and so if you're going to go with a thinner layer of foam, then you got to sort of make up the difference by just detailing your wall cavities, whatever insulation you're doing in there really well. Do, maybe airtight drywall or at least seal. You just got to make sure you get your air sealing details right so that your insulation in your walls is performing.
I don't know. I'm not scared of 4 inches of foam.
Have you tried to do that?
I'll come out, Stephanie. I'll help you.
I'll come too.
Think about a hinged patio door.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's 4 inches out of plane of whatever's holding it. Imagine how that's gonna stay true over time. It doesn't.
It complicates things, but I mean, it's 2 inches difference from 2 inches of foam. I mean, it's not. You're already going down that path.
I'm not going down that path.
You're not going down it at all.
I'm getting off that path. I'm putting 1 inch of foam.
Stephanie, you got to go back and listen to some previous episodes and check out some stuff online too before you insulate those wall cavities. Depending on what insulation you choose on the outside, you want to.
I'm thinking for them, Zip R would be a fantastic way to go.
She needs to make up a lot. I mean, clearly they're aiming for a lot of insulation. You're not going to get a lot with Zip R. What's the max you're getting from that?
Well, no, but she's going to insulate the interior cavities too.
Yeah.
Don't go hog wild, Stephanie.
Do it 4 inches.
Don't listen to Patrick.
Rob and I'll come out.
Yeah.
So you think you're going to be in this house forever, Stephanie? I can tell you, when you build your house to live in it forever, that's when you have to move out. So don't do that.
I want to see what the aluminum Bridger steel siding that she's using is.
I emailed Stephanie. I didn't hear back. I wanted to know why they want to put aluminum on it at all. What's the deal?
Because Bridger steel's metal siding is super cool.
That's
it? That's why. They make some awesome stuff.
What is it?
We used it on the last California FHB house.
I should read the magazine.
Yeah. They do. I mean, I think metal siding is awesome on houses anyway, but and a lot of people don't like it because it looks too modern. But they make batten style.
That's what she
metal
wants.
siding. They make all these different profiles that can give you more classic looks or more.
It's got to be expensive.
Oh, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, if you're willing to spend the money on that beautiful siding, you're willing to spend the money on the foam that you probably can focus on getting the details right.
I say congrats for being willing to go down this path. That's a big deal to be willing to spend that much money. Yeah.
Deep energy retrofits do not pay.
I mean, well, this goes back to what we were talking about recently about not everything can be measured by return on investment.
Yes.
It's like, is it comfortable? Is it the look you're going for? Is this the house that you want, that you're going to be proud of? And, you're not going to get math to work for you in every one of those equations.
Maybe it's, it's not the forever house, but they want to cut their teeth on how to do this work so that the next one they build, they have more knowledge. I don't know.
And
it's a tough lesson to learn that you're spending more money than you'll ever get back at a resale, though.
But you never
I never
know
get
that.
bothered by that.
You're not.
No, not even a little bit. I would be bothered by spending more money than I'm going to get back ever in energy savings and unmeasurable comfort. But in terms of resale, it's like, I don't understand the mentality.
Well, I'm not even talking about resale, but they're never going to save enough money to make the cost of putting 4 inches of insulation, residing, redoing their windows, right? They're just not going to make that back in energy savings.
I don't know. I think that's. I'm not sure if that statement is true for all situations. Like, yes,
they live in Kentucky.
You're being prejudiced there.
I'm saying that climate is not.
No,
the climate is mild.
But I'm just saying, if you live in the right place and you do the right amount of work, and real estate agents like to measure the value of a house, or appraisers like to measure value on a house on particular material choices or square footage or number of bathrooms or whatever. But sometimes there are certain details that people put into a house that will actually make it more appealing to a certain type of buyer.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think.
Do you think 4 inches of foam insulation is going to be appealing to most buyers? They're not even going to understand.
I don't know. I'm hoping we're moving in that direction.
I do too, but I don't see it.
But you're not willing to step up and do your part.
I think
you got to put 4 inches on your house, so the people in your town know that that's what's up.
So believe me, I have thought about this. Right, my house is short. It's small.
So easy.
It would be super easy. But I also have half of the wall surface area is windows. the walls are not my problem. It's the cheap vinyl new construction windows, right? It's like if I want to spend 20 grand, I'm going to put better windows in, not add foam to a wall that's not going to be marginally improved.
How many inches did you put on your barn?
So I put 3.
All right. Well,
and I bought recycled foam with Stephanie. And if you want to put a lot of foam on your house, that is the way to go.
Yeah, but
Insulation Depot.
Right.
They reclaim this from commercial roofs, and not only is it cheap, but you're not adding like global warming potential or foam production to the matrix of
Right. We've talked about that in more detail on past episodes too.
I mean, you have to be aware that when you buy that used foam that you're not getting perfect edges on every single panel, but they typically give you some overages knowing that. So
they gave me a ton more than they said, and I'm sure it was with the hope that I wouldn't be mad about the broken pieces and stuff, but I was expecting that. I mean,
it's sort of like when you buy cordwood or something. They'd give you more than a cord so that there's no question of like nitpicking.
It's a
just
great
cheaper
deal
to do that.
It's a great deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Insulation Depot's based up here in New England, but there's probably places like that all over the country doing that.
And they advertise on Craigslist, I understand, because it's a like low overhead operation.
Stephanie
typically
should also know that our next FHB house, which we're just announcing, is in right outside, I think it's right near Louisville, Kentucky.
Cool.
Yeah, and they're going to have a tour of that in the month, couple of weeks.
No, it's in, I don't know when it is. May?
Oh.
I don't know when it is.
Okay.
I want to answer Stephanie's last question before we sign off here. We'll have to build out the windows for trim. I want to replace them at the same time, but we lack funding to replace 33 windows. I have Marianne Casada's book and have learned to despise picture frame exterior trim seen on updated homes. The interior trim has a craftsman feel, which is what the house used to have on the exterior as well.
She used the word exteriorly.
I didn't use that word.
I like it.
Is it a word?
I don't think so. Should be.
It should be. It totally should be. My question is, is the best way to replicate this craftsman style on top of aluminum siding? What material is best? So you don't put it on top of the siding butts into it. So that's what you're going to have to do. If the siding ends up being proud of your window installations because you don't remove them, you're going to need to put a bed molding or casing around to make it thicker. And that's a pretty cool detail if you don't want to pull out the windows and you want to reside. And then if you did an inch of foam, you could leave your windows in place, I would say. Right?
I don't know. I'm doing 4 inches. We're going out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What material is best? Aluminum, PVC, or wood? PVC is a fantastic exterior window casing, I would say. I would not wrap wood with aluminum because every time I've gone behind that in subsequent years on remodeling projects, it is all completely rotted back there because no one details it correctly.
Terrible idea.
Terrible idea. The only contractor we've spoken with so far has looked at me like I was insane for trying to keep the trim in keeping with the home's original style.
Move to the next guy.
I would say contractors are clueless about aesthetics oftentimes. He has also never heard of using so much rigid foam on the exterior or the existence of 7-inch screws. We know all kinds of guys like this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we're still looking for a more knowledgeable contractor, hopefully one who is aware of fine home building and the tenets of building science. Thank you for any advice. I love the podcast. Keep them coming. Thank you, Stephanie, for listening. Your question was a very good one.
Yeah. Found out that Patrick doesn't like Kentucky. Doesn't believe in thick foam.
My point was the climate, not the place.
Yeah. Yeah, it is definitely more mild than our climate. You don't need as much to get to where you're going. And I definitely see your point. You could do a lot with 2 inches of foam. You could also go with an inch and a half layers of foam and save an inch that way.
And then you put your windows on 2x pack outs or whatever. I just think it's such an easier assembly. I think when you go beyond 2, it's hard.
It's definitely easier to just do 2. Or an inch and a half is an inch and a half seems to be the easiest because you can buck everything out with a 2x on the flat.
Yep.
But not impossible.
And you can nail up vinyl right over 1-inch foam. I don't think you can't do it with 2.
Why are we talking about vinyl?
I mean steel, aluminum, any of it, wood. How do you put siding on 4 inches of foam? You got to strap it.
Strips.
Yeah, you got to strap.
And
you got to put the big screws and strap. Oh,
do you think Bridger Steel has aluminum siding salesmen going around? Is that back?
So that once again, my parents' house that has aluminum on it. Probably installed in the 50s.
Have you ever had to remodel a house with aluminum and try and like tie something in?
Oh, It's impossible.
As soon as you touch it, it just like
wrinkles.
Yeah, it's like, oh no,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do now? To cut into it or whatever.
You have aluminum on your house, or is it vinyl?
No, I have aluminum around the windows, so it's probably all rotted underneath there.
That's bad.
I have wood siding, guys. No big deal.
They actually went through the trouble though with the aluminum around my windows, because my house is about the same era as that house in the picture earlier from the mid 1800s, and had nice big trim around the windows. They bent up these boxes to look like the at least the massing of the original head of the casings on the windows, and I was like, well, at least they tried to do something,
The guys who do that every day, who like bend metal around trim, I'm dazzled with their ability with a brake, but they don't seem to have very good like knowledge of gravity and water.
Yeah,
they just believe perhaps a little too faithfully in caulk.
Yeah, it's definitely a caulk system.
Yeah, caulk will fail.
Well, they just don't. There's a lot of people who just don't understand the need for moisture protection on the outside of buildings. Anyway, like I remember one place I was working where it had a nice big water table board at the bottom of the house, and people built raised flower beds higher than the bottom of the wood, and then just backfilled it with dirt
I've
right
seen
up against the house.
Mulch piled so high because like every year you get the new batch of mulch and you put it on the beds, but you never take out the old stuff, so it's like gets higher than the siding, and I've seen some pretty horrible rot and nasty stuff from that.
Keeps us in business, right?
That's right. That is right.
Do you guys have anything to add to
That's
our?
it.
Yep.
That's all I got. I'm hungry.
It was great having you guys here today. Thanks to all of you for listening, and thanks for joining us. Remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find the podcast. I'm going to plead to please review us on iTunes. The last time someone made a comment was January 15th.
We're going to shut it down if you don't write something right now.
I think we've done at least 24 bad episodes since then, so
Yeah.
say something.
You got to justify this thing to the suits.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Happy building.